I see this dilemma with us. I see it a lot, not just here, but in other comment sections, where we are asking the question, how can I be more confident as an INFJ? How can I develop confidence in myself? And while I know that this lack of confidence stems from several areas, one of the biggest areas that I have seen is that we want to say what we think, but we can't say it. We don't say it. We hold back. Basically, we don't trust ourselves to say it. Taking it further, I'm going to say we have no confidence in saying what we want to say. We have no confidence in our delivery. And why is that? Why are we lacking confidence in this area? Why do we find ourselves holding back when we want to express ourselves and say what we think? Well, I'm going to give you the conclusion first, and then you can keep listening as I develop this idea more. But basically, I think that we lack confidence in who we are, and we don't say what we think because we haven't proven what we believe. That's actually a very large statement, and it's going to take a little while for me to explain this. But we are afraid to say what we think because we don't know how to defend it. And why you believe what you believe is critical. Can you justify what you believe? If you can justify what you believe, in other words, if you have proven it to be true to yourself and you are confident in your conclusions, then you will never have trouble talking about it. And I think that's why so many of us are afraid, and we keep our mouths closed, and we're afraid to state what we believe. It's because you know it's just a feeling and you can't justify it. And you don't want to talk about it until it's more than a feeling, until you've proven it. Then you will feel comfortable talking about it because you've made it your own and you've proven it to yourself in a way that you can feel comfortable talking about it. We need to change our language. Years ago, I realized I kept saying, I feel, before every statement I made. And that started to annoy me for some reason. It seemed very wishy-washy of me to keep saying, I feel this, I feel that. And it took me a while, but I finally figured out why it was bothering me. I feel is for the feelings that I have, but I think is for what I have come to think or believe. And I know that sounds stupid and obvious, but it's really not. Think about it. How many times a day do you say, I feel, every time you begin a sentence? So I've changed my language in that regard, and I started it almost immediately. I kind of conditioned myself, and it wasn't, always the best usage, that I think sometimes I was saying, I think, when I really didn't necessarily think that, but I think it was almost that I was giving myself a confidence in my language. And I talked about in other videos how we are very good at self-delusion. And in a way, this is kind of like using reverse psychology on yourself, because if you change your language and you start saying, I think, even just privately to yourself, when you're talking out loud, you'll start feeling a bit more confident in it. But of course, it has to go further than that. It just can't go there. You actually have to know what you think. So in other words, now if I'm sick, I can say, well, I feel miserable because I'm sick. But if I've developed a strong opinion about something, I'm going to say, I think first. I'm not going to say, I feel people should come to realize, or whatever, my conclusions are about. I'm going to say, I think people should come to realize, and then go on with it. Because it's confident. It's saying that I've spent some time in my thought process, and I've come to some conclusions that I'm confident about. So I'm not going to say I feel anymore, unless it is something that's a feeling. I'm going to say I think. Or even a statement like I am, such as I am confident. Do you feel confident or are you confident? It might seem like splitting hairs, but it actually causes you to be more self-reflective when you change your language. Just asking yourself, do I think this? Or do I feel this? Or am I already this thing? I wouldn't say I feel confident. No, I am confident. And there's a big difference in those two statements. So a lot of this has to do with our self-expression. And I'm kind of concerned about some of the videos that I've seen out there, which say that the INFJ has to stop being the chameleon and that we have to start expressing ourselves. On one hand, I understand why this is being said, but unless you know what you're expressing, and more importantly, why you're expressing it, I think you're heading for trouble. We are vulnerable in our quote-unquote young thinking. So when our thinking is immature in the sense that we haven't built it yet, when we haven't built our inner house of thoughts, we are going to be vulnerable. I've been hearing people say that the best way for us to get out of these NITI loops is to express ourselves. And while I understand this on one hand, on the other, I think it's a bit dangerous for a young or immature INFJ to just go around and express themselves. I think this is what I've witnessed in others, and I've even seen it here on this platform. Because, we get to the point in life where we are ready to express ourselves. We've done a bit of observing, and we're ready to go out there and be a little bit more confident in our presentation. The problem being is that when we are young and immature in our thinking, we start expressing things that we don't know how to defend yet. In other words, it's a feeling we have about something or a belief that we have, but we don't understand why we believe it. We can't talk about why we believe it. We can't defend it. We can't justify it. So what ends up happening is that someone will challenge us in one point of our expression, and then we end up immediately backing down. Or in some cases, even on this platform, I've seen INFJs completely destroy the whole thing. They take down everything. They take down all the videos. And I've talked about this here before, that for us, it does start with a feeling. We are feelers, but we are not feelers like other feelers in the sense that we are not satisfied with keeping a feeling and saying, well, it's my feelings, and all that I care about is that my feelings make sense to me, and it doesn't matter if it can be logically proven or not. That's not who we are. That's some other types of people out there, that they're very strong and convicted in their feelings. One of my sisters is like this. For her, as long as it feels right to her, that's what's important. And that's enough for her to move forward in a positive direction. And that works for her. But it doesn't work for me. I'm not content with having a feeling. My feelings have to be proven to be true or not, and then it becomes a part of my inner thoughts in such a way that I believe it then. And then I have to prove it, I have to get to the point where I understand that I've taken this feeling and now I have proven it to be true. And so I've justified it. Now someone can challenge me on it and I can defend it. Because I've built this system in my head around this feeling, and now it's not just a feeling anymore. It actually makes logical sense, and I can make logical sense when I express it. And when we are young and immature and we can't defend or justify our feelings, and when we go around and we say, well, I feel this, and we put it out there publicly, what ends up happening is that we end up getting challenged in one point in our expression, and then we end up backing down, we shut our mouths, we step away from the conversation, or in cases like this platform here, I've seen those who have just deleted videos, deleted an entire series of videos because they've been challenged in something and they don't know how to defend it. Someone I love was just sharing a story with me about a male INFJ he had witnessed. And this is not someone in typology circles. This is in a whole other subject area. But anyway, my loved one has typed this male as an INFJ, and he has typed him correctly. But anyway, this INFJ male was sharing his thoughts in a live stream. So he was being raw and uncensored. And he said something that wasn't fully correct. Okay, I think it was a feeling he put out there. Now, my loved one, who is an INTJ, understood what this INFJ male was trying to say because they're both NI dominants. And he was understanding kind of where he was going with it. But what do you think happened? You know, he wasn't understood in this raw thought that he put out there. And he ended up getting attacked by someone else. And rightly so in a way, because it wasn't a developed thought. In other words, it couldn't be defended by this INFJ man. He couldn't defend what he said. But when he was attacked, what he ended up doing is that he dug his heels in further. And I think this is something that we do, you know, that we get angry because when we get challenged and we don't know why we believe something, it does make us angry. And I think it's not necessarily, even though the anger, I think, does get directed out to the person who challenged us, I think there's an anger at ourselves because we know that we aren't solid in our beliefs. And it irritates us because we want to be. We want it to be more than a feeling. So this INFJ male dug his heels in, and he said to this other man that he didn't know what he was talking about, and he hadn't been around as long as he had, and he didn't know as much, even though this other man was older than him. So, you know, it took him a while, I think, for him to realize that he was wrong. He shouldn't have attacked the other man, but mostly don't put stuff out there unless you can defend it, especially publicly. And that just shows me the importance of building our belief systems, building our value systems, building what we think about situations. It's so very important. I even think this is why we sometimes terminate relationships or walk away from relationships, because we put feelings out there to the other person, and the other person challenges us or doesn't understand our raw thoughts. And because we can't justify them, or because we can't explain ourselves to that person, because we don't understand why we believe that thing that we said, I think that's why we then walk away from the relationship. Because we kind of transfer our anger to that other person when we're actually really angry at ourselves because we feel hypocritical, we feel wishy-washy. That's how we actually feel. Because we can't talk about what we believe. And so we get angry, and then we say, oh, that person can't understand me, or that person doesn't understand me. And yes, on one hand, that's true, but on the other, it's because we haven't been able to properly articulate what we believe. So we get angry at ourselves, and then we project that anger onto someone else instead of turning the light on inside and saying, why am I angry? Well, I'm angry at myself, because this is a problem in my life, and I know I need to fix it and I need to work on it. But it's hard to see yourself in an accurate way. It's hard to be honest with yourself. And sometimes I think, sadly, it's easier to be angry at someone else rather than be angry at yourself. And that's another thing I wanted to just mention. This is the value of having another NI dominant in your life, because you can express your raw thoughts, and another NI dominant will at least hear what you're trying to say, especially an INTJ. You know, they can fill in the gaps for you. They can listen to you and hear what you're trying to say, and then they can help you develop that feeling into a solid thought or into something that makes sense. But, you know, that's not going to happen out there with many people. So again, if you just go out there and try to express your raw thoughts, you're going to get shot down. And in immaturity, it's probably going to make you angry. So if you want to go out there and just start expressing your raw thoughts that you haven't worked on, that you haven't figured out. Is this more than a feeling? What does this mean exactly? And how can I defend this? If you just go out and start doing that, you're not going to be understood. So I see this, a lot of times, even here in this typology world that we find ourselves in. I see immature INFJs who start expressing themselves, and then they want to do it. And when they're met with opposition, they immediately withdraw because they don't want to present themselves that way. And I've seen where people will accuse us of overthinking. And I don't think that's the case. I think that we pull back in our younger years. We stop talking. We delete videos, whatever it is. I think that we do that because we have a knowing that there is something there that hasn't been dealt with yet. We know that what we have stated can't be defended in an articulate way. And we know that, and we are unsatisfied in that. So I want to express myself, just like I'm sure all of you do, but I want to do it intelligently, and I want to do it with authority. So when I express myself, I want to be confident in my expression. And there's only one way you can be confident in your expression, and that is when you have proved it to be true, when you know how to defend your expression. And that's how you can be confident in life. That's how you become a confident person. So to say that to get out of a loop, you just have to express yourself. I would say be careful when taking this advice, especially if you are expressing yourself in unsafe circles, because you are going to be attacked and you won't know how to defend yourself, and you'll withdraw even more. You'll add another layer, and the cycle is just going to continue. Let me tell you, it's hard enough when you are able to defend what you believe and you get attacked, but it's much, much worse when you get attacked and you don't know how to respond. I don't know that you should put yourself out there when you don't know how to defend what you believe. It's kind of a fool's errand in a way, because all you're really doing is saying, I have a feeling about something. And other feelers might respect that, but only if they're a very mature person or your feeling agrees with theirs. But in other cases, when your feeling is different than their feeling, they might get upset with you, or they might attack you because your feeling doesn't match up with theirs and their values. Or you could say, I have a feeling about something. And some thinker type is going to come along and say, well, I don't respect feelings. Feelings are subjective. That doesn't mean anything to me. Where are your facts? How do you back this up? And you're going to feel personally attacked, and we don't like that. It's a very uncomfortable place to find ourselves. We want to speak from a position of confidence. We have the ability to understand logic, and we desire it. In some ways, we know that when we're younger. I think that's why we keep our mouths closed, because we know we can't speak authoritatively to what's being presented. So it takes a lot of years of observing to come to that place where you can speak to something. And that's what we desire deep down. We want to have that confidence. That's the confidence that comes from maturity, when you can sit in a discussion with people and you know what you think about the topic, and you're not afraid to start voicing what you think, because you know how to defend it. And this is why I think it's critical that we are observers for our younger years. I think it's critical that we take things in, that we study, we learn, and we absorb. It's important because it takes some time to get to the place where you've gathered enough information, you've gathered enough material that you can take everything you've learned and start to make sense of it all. To start understanding who you are, you have to understand others first. And I've said this here so many times. You have to observe others to understand yourself. And this is critical. You have to have as many people experiences as you possibly can. And in many ways, you kind of have to do it as an observer. Because when you put yourself out there, that's when you're going to get sledgehammered. Or, in some cases I've seen just as worse, you put yourself out there and you get validated in your false observations. And neither one is good, unless you are hell-bent on learning things the hard way. It's okay to be an observer. Don't let anyone tell you that this is not a necessary part of the process. You need to be an observer. It's an important part of your growth. I made a video a while back comparing us to cicadas, and I talked about cicadas being underground. There's a special kind of cicada that has to spend 17 years underground in their development, and it's in my INFJs are late to the party video if you want to watch that to understand what I'm talking about. But I compared our developmental cycle to that of the cicada. So it looks like when you're underground, when you're in that developmental stage, it looks like you're doing nothing. And I think we get frustrated with it because we think we're doing nothing, but you actually are doing very important things when you are in the underground. I've heard people kind of say that being an observer, in a way, is kind of like being a loser in life, that you're not embracing life when you're an observer. And that's not true. How many people in life, not just the INFJ, but how many people learn by keeping their mouths closed and by observing in life? Observing is not a bad thing. It's a wise thing. It's part of the process, right? And I think a lot of people, they don't understand the underground. They don't understand the developmental stage. I don't think we understand it sometimes. That's why we get frustrated in it. We can't see what's happening, but there are a lot of things happening unseen behind closed doors. When you are observing, lots of good things are happening. Don't feel like you're stuck. Don't feel frustrated. And don't let someone tell you that being an observer is wrong, that you need to move into a place where you are ready to embrace life at its fullest. You'll get there. You will, but not until you're ready. Yes, there is a time when you are ready to move out of the observational stage for the most part, because I still do a lot of observing, even at this stage of my life. Observation is not always wrong. It's sometimes the wisest thing to do. But there is a time when you're ready to move out of that stage, but not until you've done the work that you need to do to get there. Not until you're ready for it. Not until you know who you are. If you try to move out of that observational stage before you're ready, damage is going to occur. And then you're going to set yourself back even more years trying to dig out of the hole that you found yourself in because you tried to move too fast. Think of a monarch butterfly. If that butterfly tries to come out of the cocoon a few days sooner than it's supposed to, it's not going to survive. Think about a premature baby. They aren't fully developed, and they come out into a world that's dangerous to them because they don't have the skills to survive it. They are behind all the others, developmentally speaking, and it takes a long while to catch up. So know when you're in the developmental stage, and don't be frustrated when you feel like you're stuck. If you're stuck and you know it, well, then that's the time to really start thinking about what you believe and why you believe it. And you'll know when it's time to move out. I've also heard it stated that we have a problem with overthinking. Can we overthink things? Absolutely. And I believe this occurs when we don't necessarily approach things from a logical standpoint. That's when we start overthinking. But I don't believe that overthinking is always a problem. In fact, I actually see it as a strength of ours. I believe that there are answers in life to things. Things can be explained, and they can be explained logically. I actually believe that. And because of this belief, it's what drives me in my life. It's my personal philosophy. And because it's my philosophy, it's what drives me to find answers. And I don't consider that a weakness. It keeps me always searching in life. I'm always looking for answers. And I do believe that there are answers out there for a lot of the questions that we face. And I don't think we should be afraid to search for the answers. And I don't think we should tell ourselves that we're overthinking or that it's a weakness of ours, because I think that this always questioning, always wanting to know why is a great gift that we possess. And when we embrace logical thinking, that's when this questioning and always asking why becomes a skill, because it actually leads us to some very good places in life. And it drives us to find some conclusions that perhaps a lot of other people might overlook. You have to know who you are. So when someone says you're overthinking, or you shouldn't be an observer in life, or you have to understand this the way I see it, well, you have to know that it won't work for you, because that's not who you are. You have to know who you are. I had to even prove myself to myself. I had to look in the mirror and say, why am I like this? And I had to figure all this out and make it a part of me. And that's when I finally understood myself. So I think that's part of the process, understanding yourself. And then the next step is understanding what you believe about things, what you think. You want to know why things are the way they are. And you want to be able to understand it in a way that you can speak to it in an intellectual way so that others can understand it as well, so that you can make it understandable to others. I have some more things to say about this because this leads me into another topic, but I'm going to reserve it for another video because I also think it's something that's extremely important and goes hand in hand with this topic. It's a skill that we really should develop if we want to get to that place in life where we feel comfortable in discussions. And not just in discussions about things that we are well versed in, but even some subject areas where we might not feel that we have that much expertise. But there is something that we can develop that I'd like to talk about more in another video, and I will be putting that out in the next few weeks. But for now, I want you to think about this. Change your language. Start thinking why. Ask yourself why. Why do I believe this? Take those feelings that you have and work on them in your head. Play with them. Experiment with them. Spend time thinking about those feelings. Educate yourself so that you can get to the point where you don't say, I feel confident. You want to be able to say, I am confident, and I'm ready to express myself to the world in a way which is most productive and beneficial for me and for society.